Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's episode of Highlights. You guys, today is a day that we all need more than ever. In these crazy times, these dark, challenging, complex, wild times, there is one human who is here to help us feel a little lighter, reclaim some of our joy, and tap into our optimism. Ladies and gentlemen, introducing my very dear friend, Tami Evans. Tami, how are you?
I am here. I'm like all of us, right? I'm like riding the wave and just figuring it out as we go and waking up each morning and trying to just take 1 minute to just be super grateful to be here. And I'm so grateful to be here with you and little Stevie Nicks in the background.
We're so excited to have you. For those of you who do not know Tami Evans, I have the privilege of being her dear friend. She is a member of the She Noters, which is a group of keynote speakers who support each other. And even more interestingly, Tami has taught Dr. Oz how to chair dance. She is the former president of the National Speakers Association of New York City. And since the pandemic, she's been performing for her family daily. And they all asked to thank us for giving them a break from her entertaining them to be entertaining us. I do not believe that, Tami, but Tami is an author, a speaker, and has been called a human exclamation point. She is also the author of the book Half Full of It. And she's here today to help us figure out how we can activate our optimism in a space and time and season where optimism feels a little hard to come by in some ways. So Tami, Christine Cashin's with us too. Hey, Christine. And my mother, I want to be lighter. Mom, we're not talking about weight loss, talking about our souls here. Okay, so Tami, so in your book is so great, by the way. For those of you who have not read Half Full of It, I highly recommend that you check it out. If you're looking for incredible stories and motivation, this is the book for you. So one of the stories that I loved that you shared was when you were talking about you were living in a very small apartment, aka studio, aka closet in New York. Can you tell us a little bit more about that experience and some of the lessons that you learned about positivity and optimism?
Yeah, absolutely. So New York City is a really interesting place when it comes to real estate. It's like character means crumbling, and cozy means like absolutely minuscule. There was one apartment that I looked at where you could reach your hand out and touch both of the walls. Like it was basically a hallway. Someone had turned into a studio, and you can find bathtubs in the kitchen. And one woman that I was going to do a share with had a bird that lived on her shoulder, and she was like, she would look right at it. She said, "Listen, nothing with a smell can come into the apartment." People take those apartments because property is at such a high value and you want to live. And so when I arrived in Manhattan, I mean, I had like a suitcase, and I had a lot of friends and connections through grad school and theater and things like that. And I ended up finding a twice removed illegal sublet. She was the sort of person whose name was on the lease, worked for a television show, but lived somewhere else. Then he subleased to the one of the costume people for Riverdance, and then she subleased it to me. And the whole apartment was like, you mentioned my friend Christine Cashin, who's one of the greatest humans on the face of the earth. The whole apartment was the size of her walk-in closet. Large walk-in closet. However, the whole apartment was that size. And the deal for the subleasing was that I would, when she was off on tour with Riverdance, which was almost all the time, which you are a step dancer.
I was just gonna say, that's so funny. I'm like, go on.
The overlapping circles, right?
We're all connected.
You.
The Lord of the Dance. For those of you listening, so in my former life, I was an Irish step dancer. And when I graduated high school.
An award-winning Irish step dancer.
Oh my gosh. Well, yeah, when I graduated high school, my dad was like, you're not going to do river dance. You're going to do college, homegirl. So it's like, oh. But anyway, so keep going. That is so funny. Okay, so this is a whole like complicated peek into the web illegal. Of New York real estate. Who knew?
Yeah. Oh yeah. So it's highly illegal and highly it's so common, especially in the entertainment industry, because a lot of times you're gigging, right? You're out on the road doing a show, you come back, all that stuff. So she had these two enormous black long-haired cats, and she would go on tour. I would move in. And I would live in the apartment and take care of the cats and forward her mail to her when she was on the road. Now, so let's say the rent was $1,000 a month. She would pay $500. I would pay $500, and we would give it to the guy whose name was on the lease. Now, the thing is, the lease was rent control, which is like, landlords hate rent control because the property, it's a really low price for so I was a half a block off Central Park.
Oh my gosh.
Living in this tiny little, it was like below, remember Laverne and Shirley? It was kind of below the sidewalk level. So it was kind of like see people's feet walking by, which is probably when I got my obsession with shoes. And so the thing is, this kind of went on. Well, one day I came home and I was working on the design team for Banana Republic. Only in New York did these things happen. But I came home and there was a big like orange sign on the door, and the door was cracked open, and there was this huge man in there, and he was putting all of my things in these big black garbage bags. And me being me. So I stood in the doorway and I said, can I help you? And I mean, he was really quite polite. So what he explained to me is that while the two of us had been paying the person who had the apartment for the last 6 months, that person had not been paying the rent.
Oh my God.
But they had like a private investigator kind of watching. So they knew that I wasn't, they knew I was some other. So the thing on the door said Jane Doe, eviction notice, all this stuff. And they gave me 2 days. I couldn't go back in then, but they gave me 2 days to get all my stuff out and find somewhere else to go and get the cat set up and everything like that. And what that did for me, I mean, after the initial like, oh no. What it did for me is it like really kind of released me from the idea of having to look at things in a way that seem like you have to do it in this order.
Yeah.
When I went to look to rent another apartment, you had to do it through a broker, and a broker would charge you a month's rent to find you, a crappy little roach infested piece of property. And I thought, you know what, I'm not going to pay someone for that. So for the next like 5 months, I begged, borrowed, I saved, I made a little deal with my parents. And anyway, I was able to purchase my first apartment in New York City. I knew it was incredible. It was like, it was really magical. It was the release of feeling like I was tied. And the most bizarre thing is I remember the day that I closed on the apartment and I went in. And I don't know if you know that feeling, but anytime you're moving in somewhere new, whether you're just renting, whether you're purchased, whether it's, going to be a long-term stay somewhere, and you kind of walk in and you're sort of like, you take it in, and I feel like the space sort of envelops you, right?
Yeah.
And so it's kind of like that, you get a vibe. So big tip, if you're ever buying property, spend a few moments in that property alone just to feel the vibe. So I walked in and I felt like this vibe, like this apartment sort of welcomed me in. And I remember kind of sliding down the wall. And your listeners, I think, will completely understand this feeling, is that I felt, even though I just signed this mortgage, I owned the property, I thought I own a piece of Manhattan now. And my first thought was, now I can leave anytime I want.
Wow.
It's on my terms.
Wow. Yeah.
So it was sort of like and since that time, home has always been a grounding force for me. And what I've learned to do, because Erin, I mean, we're out on the road. Remember when we used to be out of the
We
used to be out on the
used to.
road all
Yeah.
the time.
Yeah.
So you need to create that feeling of home for yourself, or whatever your anchor is. You have to do it. And so I think I'd ask your listeners, think about what is their anchor? Is it family? Is it home? Is it health? Is it fresh air? Is it whatever that is? If you can identify what your anchor is, then the next time you feel, that feeling of like anxiety that kind of builds up and all of a sudden you feel it in your throat, oh yeah, you felt it.
Yeah, we've all been feeling that pretty much the last couple of days, I'd say. At the time of recording, and for the listeners, so right now it's the presidential election here in the U.S., and there's just a little bit of anxiety and stress and worry gripping pretty much everyone in the nation right now. So Tami, I gave her the get out of jail free card and said, hey, listen, if you don't want to do a podcast about optimism right now, I get it. And she said, bring it on. Let's be the light. Let's do this. So I'm so thankful for you being here. Anyways, a segue. So keep going. So yes.
Yeah, it is
so we know that feeling.
Week, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Very unusual. So that feeling that you get when you're just kind of unbalanced, think about, check in with your anchor.
Yeah.
And make sure your anchor is anchored. So a lot of times right now, so you're feeling that, that stress or whatever.
Yeah.
Think about your anchor. So for me, if it's home, it's like, okay, what's here that I can focus on? What's here that I can give my attention, my love, my resources to right here, because this is where I feel grounded. So for someone else, if it were nature, if nature's your anchor, get your butt out of here and get your feet. And, that is a real thing.
Yes.
Get your feet in the ground, get your feet in the sand, get your feet in the water. And for my friends up north, do it just for a second.
Put those tootsies in the snow for just a minute.
Put your hands on a tree. Be a tree mother, right? I mean,
that's funny that you said a tree. One of my dear girlfriends is an awesome yogi out here. And I know for those of you who know Tami, she's a major yogi. I mean, you inspire me to hashtag yoga every damn day. That is you to the ground, and no pun. And what I will say is that one of my girlfriends here in Laguna has this thing, and it's actually what you're talking about. It's a grounding exercise where you go outside, put your feet on the ground, and you imagine that you are a tree, and you imagine that your feet are roots, and you feel the roots like cementing you down into the ground. Now, if we're losing you with this California, Florida, woo-woo hippie crap, just give it a whirl. I am telling you, if you're feeling your heart race and you just spend a couple of minutes saying to yourself, like, I am anchored to the earth, I am all the way to the ground, and you picture the biggest winds and storms, and your leaves are coming off, but you are still fully grounded. And you think of those leaves as like your anxieties and your worries leaving you. I mean, these exercises, even for 5 minutes, it sounds crazy, but you will feel your blood pressure totally decrease. So I'm retweeting what you're saying. I love it. So keep going. Sorry.
And here's an additional exercise, if just on the idea of, it's really, it's like a moving meditation. So if you have a challenge you're trying to overcome, a problem you're trying to solve, some complex, like trying to organize your Christmas plans during a global pandemic, and your mother's like, when are you coming? Something like that. Or, your business, you're like, where am I going next? If you have this complex problem, I encourage you to get out, set an alarm for 30 minutes on your device or your watch or whatever. Do not have anything in your ears. So it is clearly just you with you, and I almost say you drop the problem into the machine, your brain, go out. And here's a funny thing that happens to me, and it may happen to you, is that the first, 5-10 minutes, your brain fights you. It's like, this is a waste of time. What am I doing? I have all these other things to do. I have these things to worry about. I have all this stuff that I need to be thinking about. And then your brain starts to relax a little bit. And it's with the stepping. You can run. I used to be a runner, but now I'm just a walker. And what happens is, after that first grip, then your brain, it allows it to start chewing. And you notice things, and you just sort of remind your brain back onto the problem you're thinking about. And what will happen is ideas or suggestions even will start to bubble up to the top. And set your goal for three things that bubble up. They don't have to, and again, it's brainstorming. They don't have to be perfect. And when you think of one, here's an idea for a solution, right? You just hold out one finger, right? And you just keep that finger out as you walk along, and you put that idea right there. And then the next one comes up. So by the end of your walk, run, you've got three ideas, and you've kind of put them there so you don't forget them. And then you come back, you jot those down, and you are tenfold further toward a solution than you were when you started your walk. And it's an action-based moving meditation that allows you to tap into the power of what you already know to kind of sort through some really complex ideas that you might be struggling with.
Tami, that is so good. I love that. And I think for all of us right now, just having something simple and actionable that we can actually do without a lot of training or studying or tools or resources or time is something very small that can help guide us back towards the light and back towards the motivation, the inspiration, the optimism that maybe before the pandemic, it came easier to maybe people. And maybe your baseline of joy, your baseline of happiness, your baseline of motivation or clarity was just a little higher. And just after the shitstorm of 2020, we have to fight harder to maintain that baseline, all of us. And so what I'm so grateful for with you being here today is I know that you have so many different strategies and tactics that you share with huge audiences, by the way, you guys, around the world. I mean, Tami's been on some of the biggest stages full of stadiums and convention centers. So we're really lucky to have her. Not only that, but she's also, fun fact, the voice of the hold music, which I found out on Google today, that you are the girl who says, can you give it to us for a second?
Close your eyes from my voiceover work. Ready? And your call is very important to us. Please remain on the line for the next available representative. Now you have a face to hate.
Oh my, I cannot believe you are that gal. I have cussed you out so many times in the other end of a customer service call. Anyway, it's a fun fact about Tami anyway. But tell us, I mean, you have in your keynotes and in your coaching and in your courses you have so many brilliant ways to bring that joy and that optimism and that positivity even into like the toughest situations. So, I mean, would you mind just sharing maybe like one or two with our audience that we could try, especially during these crazy times?
Absolutely. And the thing is, everything that we're talking about is, I know some of the most incredible people, present company included. You are out, talk about major stages, television shows, podcasts. You've worked, your company, you own the company that ran the social media for the Oscars. And I would probably, this is making an assumption, but I'm guessing that you at an occasion have struggled with imposter syndrome.
100%.
Right? And that occasionally you might have just had to take a deep breath and make it up. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So we are all universally in a moment of time where there is no other choice but to make it up, because these are uncharted waters. And the person that stands in front of you and says, "Oh, I've got it all figured out. Just do what I say," run. Mm-hmm. Nobody's got it all figured out. In fact, now is the perfect time to take a risk, to put yourself out there, to just go for it, because no matter what happens, you're trying something. Mm-hmm. I know you live in, right off the coast of the ocean. You're right on Laguna Beach. You've got like water all around you. You're a surfer girl. So I know you understand water and being in the water. And maybe people who don't live near a lake or an ocean, maybe they have a swimming pool or they've been in a swimming pool. Just, we moved down to Florida a year ago, and from the New York City area. And when moving, our son was just about to start high school. And we said, would you be willing to go to high school in Florida? And he said, heck yeah, can we have a pool? So for the first time, we have a swimming pool. And so it's been this expensive love relationship. But one of the things that has really struck me is the peace that I find under the water. And if you've ever submerged yourself, even in a bathtub, when you submerge yourself under the water, you naturally look up, right? Your body just naturally kind of like looks up. And if you're at the bottom of a swimming pool or a body of water, you can see the sky, or you can see light. You can see the light above the water, but you can't see what's out there clearly, right? So if you're lying under there, you know that there's light above, and that is also, P.S., where the air is.
Right.
So you cannot stay submerged under the water. So the only thing you can do is head toward the light, knowing that when you get there, you will have breath and there will be something waiting for you. I feel like right now, in this moment in time, we are all laying at the bottom of the swimming pool, and the only thing we can do is just keep looking and leaning and moving toward the light. We do not know what is going to be there. However, we know there is going to be breath, and we know that there is always hope. So if we have those two things and we keep moving forward, everything is going to be okay.
Did anyone else just feel like chills and like they want to cry and decompression? Because that's what I just experienced from you, Tami. It's so powerful and it's so simple. And that visual was so clear to understand that because we are all feeling like that. We're feeling like, but we're feeling almost, I think some of us are feeling submerged, like someone's holding us underwater, not even a voluntary, it's like an involuntary submersion. But I think for everyone listening, if you felt emotional listening to that, like I did, the good news is that even though you might feel like you're in the bathtub by yourself, it's actually a big group bathtub situation. Not to go down a weird path, but we're all in this together, separate but together, as they say these days. So what would you say, I mean, that is so powerful. What would you say is a mantra that you have been anchoring on when you find yourself forgetting to go towards the light, or feeling like it's just too far away, or that, you just, I don't know, that you just feel like, for our friends listening that are maybe really struggling with depression right now and anxiety and mental health issues and all these challenges, do you have a mantra that you anchor on? Do you have a phrase that can help them snap back to, okay, I need to get out of this bathtub and head toward the light right now?
Yeah. So I'd like you to think about something that you should do. You should do it. People, they're asking you to do it. You should do it. Maybe it's organize your closet. Maybe it's reach out to 10 new potential clients. Maybe it's lose the pandemic 7 pounds. You should do it, right? Think of that thing you should do. I want your listeners to think of that thing. You got it? You got a thing. Okay. So now think about, what if you just tried 1% harder? What if you just did 1% more to achieve that thing that you need to do, that thing you should do? What if you tried 1% harder? Can you picture that? Can you picture what that feels like? Can you feel it in your body? What should you do? 1% more. Okay. All right. Pause. Now think of that thing you should do, that thing you should do, right? Now, can you imagine what it feels like if you just let it go? It's gone. You just let it go. You don't have to do it anymore. You don't need to do it. You don't have to do it anymore. It's gone. What does that feel like in your body? The letting go is what allows you to move to the light. It will absolutely lighten you. It will lift you, and it will allow space for love. Not only love for the environment around you, the people that you're interacting with, it will allow love for yourself. Because you know what? We are doing a lot of hard work right now. We are doing work that we are not programmed for. No one has taught us how to do this work. And that is the work of just living and trying to stay positive, and oftentimes not only just for us, but for those of us who are around us as well. Mm-hmm. So I think that when you let go, you move to the light. Mm-hmm. A funny story, another New York City story. Right after I moved there, my sister Jody, who is just the greatest gift that I've ever received in my life, she is a horse person. I am not a horse person. I look in their eyes and I'm like, I don't see anything thinking there. So I don't know how to communicate. So I am a little nervous around horses, but she had horses. She jumped horses. She had horses. She came to visit me right after I moved to New York City, and I wanted to make her visit amazing. And so I looked up, actually, I think it was even pre-internet. That's how old I am. And I looked in the phone book for a horse stable where you could, ride a horse. And I found one on 95th Street on the Upper West Side. And we went to this place where you had to go up one level, and it was like a whole building was emptied out, and there was a horse arena and stables in this building. And we got on our horses, and here's what they didn't tell you is you had to ride the horse through 2 huge city blocks before you got to Times Square. Oh
my God.
Central Park.
Oh my God.
Right? Oh my God. Buses and cars are going by and they're riding the horse. And so my horse, Jody's there, looking amazing, sitting up straight. My horse kept turning its head to the side. And it kept turning its head to the side. So I kept pulling the reins, right? I kept pulling the reins around to try to get its head to look forward because I didn't want it to suddenly run out into traffic. So we get to Central Park, the bridle path, and we ride around the bridle path. I'm not one of those people that sits up straight, right? I'm holding on to the reins, like I'm holding on for dear life to the reins. And I keep pulling the horse and I'm holding the horse. So the horse's head is tucked like this and the horse's head is like this. The horse is very uncomfortable, which I think is unfair. And so I'm trying to ride. And my sister is just beautifully prancing in front of me. And at one point, we didn't even realize it, but we get near this movie set. Someone is filming in Central Park and there's these people saying, stop, stop. So I'm trying to stop the horse. And the horse is like crossing its leg and dancing and it scoots right into the middle of the movie set, which we later find out was the Devil's Own with like Harrison Ford and Brad Pitt and all this. I have no idea because I immediately closed my eyes and my sister is like, what are you doing? And I'm like, I can't get the horse to think. And she said, let go. And so I let go of the reins and the horse knew exactly what to do. And with his little turned head, he just made his way back to the bridle path and started clopping along just fine.
Wow.
But that's another example of when you're trying to control something so much. And we are business owners. We are, just thinkers in this world. We are people who are trying to make a positive difference. We are trying to move things forward. A lot of times we feel like we have to do it. So again, that idea of letting go to get to the light.
It's such great advice. And, I know it's also a great Frozen song that we all love. But here's the thing. I was thinking, let it go. But as a surfer as well, I don't know if any of you have ever tried surfing or even if you've been swimming in the ocean. But when the waves are super big and it's really rough out, a lot of times you get knocked off and you get held under a couple different waves, a couple different sets, and it keeps crashing on your head and crashing on your head. And you feel like you're being tossed around in a washing machine to the point that you start swimming. And oftentimes you don't even know if you're swimming down deep further or up towards the surface. And the most beginner surfers will fight and kick and they'll run out of breath and they'll exhaust themselves. And that is how you drown. The most smart surfers, the most experienced surfers, they literally do the opposite of what their mammalian instinctual brain is telling them to do. And they just, to your point, they let go. And they let the ocean do what it will with them. They focus on staying calm. They focus on their breath, holding their breath. And then eventually they find their way to the surface with enough energy to survive. So to your point, It really is. I mean, I don't care what scenario, whether it's horses or surfing or pandemics or elections, or whether it's the thing that you don't want to do or the thing you're avoiding or the thing you just feel is out of your grasp. Can you, after this podcast today, can you try, to Tami's point, to just let go and see what happens? I mean, it really is such powerful advice. I think one thing I want to circle back with earlier is talking about imposter syndrome. And I think for leaders, if you're a leader listening to this, a leader of a team, a leader of a family, a leader of your own life, CEO of your own world, or CEO of many people's worlds, I want to ask you, Tami, about this idea of letting go, which for leaders is exceptionally hard because we are supposed to be the ones, driving the game plan, driving the team, having the answers. And I remember once a couple years ago, when I first started out in my speaking career, and a really wise speaker that we both know told me, make sure you're always teaching from wounds and from scars and not wounds. They said, teach from a scar that has healed, that you've learned the lesson. Be careful about teaching from wounds that are still fresh and still healing, because you don't have the insights you need yet to be that sage on the stage or that guide on the side. And I'll never forget that, because I think in this time, it is really challenging because we are all experiencing fresh wounds collectively, simultaneously, as a human race right now on all different levels. We do feel like imposters because we have to keep leading. We have to keep going forward. We have to keep on keeping on going towards the light. And we do feel like we're faking it more than usual, or being imposters more than usual, because we don't have any other choice. It's all of our first time, pretty much, in a pandemic. So there's no playbook, and we're all just doing our best. So what would you say is kind of your advice for leaders that are fighting to let go, in a way, fighting that imposter syndrome, and just really fighting, when it's hard to see the light? And I think as leaders, especially, because people are looking to us to show them where it is, so what would you say to those people?
The funny thing is when you think of a leader, you think of someone who can help, again, guide you toward the light. So in this time, especially because of many waves that we're encountering right now, I feel like the most powerful leaders don't have the answers. The most powerful leaders ask the questions. And we are in a world where a lot of times winning is valued over learning, and flawlessness is seen to be better than creativity, and sameness is valued over risk taking. And if we try to lead that way, or even try to just live that way, with the societal confines and all of the baggage that is, not to mention the global pandemic and other things that are happening right now, what that can lead to is a feeling of isolation and dissatisfaction. It can lead to depression, stagnation, and more often than not, we end up with this deep-rooted feeling of failure. And it's not even something we can put a finger on, but we just walk around all the time feeling like we're not enough. We haven't done enough. We haven't said enough. We haven't given enough. We haven't tried enough. I mean, that whole not enough is like this hollow pit, right, that lives in you. And what if instead of trying to just fill that hollow pit with doing more and all of these things that we think that we're supposed to do, what if instead we just reached out and said, I don't really have a great idea for our next step. Can everyone just give me 2 thoughts that they might have on this? Let's open it out to a conversation. And you could ask that of one person. You could ask that of yourself on that 30-minute, motivational meditation we talked about. You could ask it to your whole team. You could crowdsource it, to your 45,000 followers on your social or whatever. But what if we open out and ask rather than just trying to figure it out on our own?
Why are we so afraid of doing that? I mean, it sounds so simple when you say that. It's, of course, if you don't have the answers, collaborate, crowdsource, palms up. What's wrong with that? I wonder why, as leaders, we feel so much pressure to always be the answer. And I think that what you're talking about is so important if you're a leader, and today, as a matter of fact, you have a meeting that you're going into and you don't have the answers, and you do feel like you're bullshitting your way through, and you are sort of asking yourself, like, how am I going to be the perfect solution for this? Again, circling back to the theme of this podcast, let go this unrealistic expectation and this limiting belief of perfectionism that does not exist, especially now. And that really is actually a pretty freeing thought, because right now, everyone's expectations of what success looks like have been lowered. Like, what success looked like in 2019, very different than 2020. For some of us, success is getting out of bed and not crying. So for some of us, it's just staying our natural course. For some of us, it's maintaining friendships that are far away or family that's far away. It's the definition of what that success or perfectionism might look like is so different. So what if we really hugged that? What if we really embraced this unique time as a space, a safe space to kind of get a little wild? Don't have the answers. Do ask the questions. Take the pressure off. Like, what could happen? I mean, what a great silver lining.
Yes. And for those, because I always say, I know life is not about unicorns farting rainbows. So I know that there are some instances where, as a leader, you need to show up with the confidence that you will work it out, and you will. So if you want to use this technique and you're in a corporate environment, let's say, and you want to go into a meeting where you are responsible for the answers, you can always say, I do have a couple of outlined solutions. However, I think the power lies in the sharing of ideas, and especially shared experiences. There are unique individuals in this room. I'd love to hear the ideas that you have before I finalize this. That way, it allows you to still maintain that, I'm driving this bus, but I'd like a few ideas going into that. And the thing I think to also think about is, as a leader or someone that's trying to solve something for other people, a really wonderful way to get unique ideas around how to solve it is to talk to someone who has nothing to do with what you're trying to solve. And that could even be, sometimes I talk to our 15-year-old son and I'm like, what are your thoughts on this? And trust me, he has a perspective, and so would, our male person has become our friend. And so I might say, hey, Sophie, what do you think about this? You just ask people that have nothing to do with what you're working on, and you might be surprised at kind of some really interesting insights that you might get.
Yeah, it's so true. So Tami, let's talk about, for those of us who are the optimism sharers. So those of us who so I feel like there's a spectrum of this pandemic, right? There are people who are living their best pandemic life. And then there are people who are hanging on by a very small thread, smaller than ever this week, right? So for those of us who have this spectrum of buddies, for example, my brother and his wife, they are kind of loving the pandemic, which sounds bad to say, but because they have 3 kids under 4, they have a dog, and they don't have to do the hour commute into Boston each way. They're spending all this time. So they're kind of like snuggled in, they get the fireplace going, they get the hot cocoa, they get the movies. They're like, this is kind of great. They work from home, no big deal. They're not dependent on events like we are. And so for those of us who have friends, maybe you're listening and you are my brother or my sister-in-law, you are one of these people who's like, yeah, it's a bummer. I hope everyone can stay safe, but like, I don't mind the new normal. How can they continue to show up for people that need their cup to be filled by that positivity without draining themselves? Because I feel like I have a couple of girlfriends that I'm over relying on for the good vibes and the rainbows, because, so how can they sort of protect their optimism? How can they protect that mental space so that they don't find themselves getting dragged down into under the water with some of the other of us?
Yeah, absolutely. So I believe that, do you remember when you used to be able to call someone and just have a conversation and you didn't have to put makeup on for it?
Yes.
So a telephone call, like really a telephone call, is a great tool in this case. because you want to be there to support. But if you are, first of all, when you're on camera, you are having a face-to-face conversation, and it is already more intense than a phone call, because your attention is demanded. Your responses need to be physical and verbal. So if you are a person who is supporting others who are finding it more challenging, I would recommend that you have, like, you could call it a coffee chat, or, a talk and walk, or something along the lines of, I've got 30 minutes, 20 minutes, whatever it is. I would love to hear what's going on and help in any way that I can. I want you to know we're going to be on the phone, and you may hear a few clinks and clunks, because while we're doing that, I'm going to be, kind of sorting through a drawer, or I'm going to be out on a walk, or I'm going to be doing something else while we're having the conversation, which allows the person who is giving, the support, it allows them to be doing something physically that's for them, while at the same time they're doing something verbally for the person who needs them. And that tends to help balance out that give, the weight of the give. And I mean that with love. I don't mean that it's, it isn't a burden, but it is a weight. Right?
Yeah, it's so true. And that's so good, because it's almost like kicking it back to the old school is a very helpful way for us to bring it back to the old school, right? The values. And I love it. I love it. Okay. So I just want to share one quote from your book that I underlined and highlighted, hence the name of the podcast, to death. And here is what you wrote on page 11 of your book, Half Full of It. For those of you listening, listen, lean forward. This is for you. Tami Evans says, I think the secret to getting the most out of this life is to not be fearful of the road you're traveling, but to understand that your journey will have construction detours, potholes, and most likely a change of vehicle or two. Embrace the idea that you are not experiencing wrong turns. You are embarking on new adventures. And get comfortable with the idea that you are actually the one driving. My favorite quote of the whole book. So good. Because it's funny, because even though we feel like we are just being dragged on this crazy road trip of 2020, technically we are still behind the wheel of our vehicle. Mm-hmm. We still every morning wake up and we have the choice of how to ride the Corona coaster for that day. Right? So I think it's a great reminder that even though so many things do feel out of our control, some of the things that Tami talked about today in this podcast, taking the meditation, having the mindfulness, managing your energy with others, going towards the light, being okay to not have the answers, all of these great solutions and tactics and strategies that she shared with us today are 100% within our control. And I don't know about you guys, but that makes me feel empowered and inspired. So Tami, thank you so much for sharing everything. Before we jump off, I have a question for you. I know you're an avid reader. You're a voracious reader. You have so many great relationships with some of the world's most incredible minds. Who is a great nonfiction author that you have been turning to either lately or during this time, and you're just loving their content or their book, or they're just helping you move towards the light on your own?
Yeah. So I'm currently in the middle of Untamed, which is, you and I have talked about that. So reading Glennon Doyle's book, something that I go back to time and time again, and I have read it 3 times from cover to cover. And each time I see it in a whole new light, and something else stands out for me, which it's an oldie but goodie. It is Eat, Pray, Love. And the ideas that when you read it with what everything is going on right now, you see things completely differently. So I think some of those things are really, I'm going to start Dan Rather's What Unites Us. Okay. That is my next book. Because I think, and I'll leave on this note, is that while we're in the middle of this tumultuous time, I think that the way to move toward the light is to look forward. And it could be forward an hour, it could be forward a day, it could be forward to 2021, but to look forward and understand that, again, with the letting go, to let go of anything that we are holding on to that harms us. And that can be beliefs, that could be determination. That could be the fact that your next door neighbor does not see the political system in the same way that you do. The way that we move forward toward the light is to let it all go. It's over. Let's let it go. Let's move toward our next place, and let's do it with unity and look above the surface. Don't be swimming around in this sandy, rocky, upside downness anymore. Let's let all of that go, and let's move with unity toward a big, bright, beautiful future together.
Tami, thank you so much. You are such a special soul, and you are a human, exclamation mark. That is an unbelievably accurate description. You're a dear friend. You have a kind heart. You are the most interesting, talented person I think I've ever met. And for those of you who are in agreement with me, check out TamiEvans.com. You can pick up her book, Half Full of It, at TamiEvans.com. Follow her on Instagram. She has this incredible Jump for Joy photo series on her Instagram that just makes you smile. Definitely blesses your news feed with some positivity visually. So definitely follow my friend Tami. And again, Tami, thank you so much for everything. And I hope to see you in real life very soon.
You also. Bless you all.